Author is funded by the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, supporting writers from pen to publication since 1955. To learn more about the PNWA and their yearly conference, please go to pnwa.org. Hi, this is Bill Kenower of Author Magazine, and today I'm here at Third Place Books in Lake Forest Park, Washington, with Drew Chapman, author of King of Fear. Drew, welcome to Author.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
I talk to so many writers, and I think one of the challenge writers have early on, because most writers don't know writers. They're not like Andre Dubus, whose dad was a writer and so on. It tends to be closer to the story where they don't know anybody. And so it is tricky to go from being you to being one of the people here on the shelf that make that mental leap.
Yes.
Or for you onto the screen, to see your words on the screen.
Yes, it does. But I would say that I come from a very bohemian family.
Oh yeah.
So my father he's retired now, but he was a cameraman in the movie business. And he was a cinematographer for a long time. And my grandfather, his grandfather-in-law, I don't know what the word is, that guy, he was also a cinematographer in the movie business, so I have ties to that.
See, but that's significant because it demystifies the artistic life a little bit.
Absolutely, and it's not just that it demystifies the artistic life, which I think is important, it demystifies and actually normalizes the bohemian, partially employed life. Yeah. So there were there were months going on years where my dad didn't work, where we had nothing. Like he was, sitting in the bedroom watching television and my mom was like losing her mind, but it was normal. It was what happened. And then there would be months when he would just be gone shooting a movie and, but we were getting money. And so we lived that very up and down life, which is the life that you have to lead if you're gonna write or be an artist. Unless you're, Tom Clancy, that's the way it works.
But it's absolutely true, and I think that it's one of the hurdles that a lot of people going into the arts have to overcome is you're not going to punch a clock. I mean, maybe you'll write a book a year and you'll write a series, and that's great, but you have to get there, and it is just not like other lawyers and doctors where the path is kind of clearly laid for you.
Oh, and that idea, more than the idea, I think, at least in conversations I've had with people who don't do it, more than the idea of how do you become so creative, it's how do you stand that bohemian lifestyle.
That's right. That's right. And so, all right, so your writing career really began in television.
My writing career began...
Your professional writing career began in television, or did it start earlier than that?
Started earlier than that, right out of college. And in college, I worked as a journalist.
I see.
I summered, I worked at the Hartford Courant, and then after college, I realized that I didn't want to actually have a real job. And that being a journalist required
That's a real job.
That is a real job. That is a full-time, 24-hour day job. And it required a commitment to truth and accuracy that I just did not commit. That was really hard for me. I would get stuff wrong, horribly wrong, and embarrassingly wrong. In fact, in college, they called me Slandrew because I was so bad at that. And it was so humiliating. And I just realized that, okay, you know what?
I want to make stuff up.
I think it's not that I want to make it up, it's that I better make it up because otherwise I'm going to get fired. I mean, and I still think of myself as very journalistic. I love doing research. I love talking to people. I love getting people on the phone and discussing where this story is going to be, how to ground it, sort of just make it real. So that was where I started. Very soon after that, I stopped being a journalist for reasons we just discussed. And then I went and did production work in the movies because my dad was a cinematographer and I could do it. But I always knew I wanted to be a screenwriter. I did not want to do production work.
And so you were toiling away, doing the production work, earning your living, and writing.
Yeah, and
writing
so what
screenplays and writing your screenplays.
Exactly, and so I would take jobs for like a month or two, make enough money that then I could live in my tiny little apartment in Los Angeles and just, write my screenplays. And within a couple of years, I had sold a screenplay, and that's what you needed. Yeah. And then once you've sold one, then you're in the Writers Guild, and you've made enough money, and then you're kind of going from there.
Well, meanwhile, television is kind of flourishing,
right?
I think, and I have a friend who's doing it, and they're doing such interesting stuff.
Television's where it's at. It's fantastic. And so I stopped doing features 10, 12 years ago, only do television, and that's all I've done in the interim. So.
But now television is, of course, not all, but mostly it's the writer's room. Tends to be the way television gets written.
Yes.
And most of the writers I know like to be alone. They prefer it, but obviously you were able to work in that environment.
It's so hard to write scripts that, in a way, it requires a number of people doing it at the same time to write a really good script. There's so much more plot in a television show than there is in a book. There's no.
I never thought of that.
It doesn't even compare.
You mean in an HBO type, like in a dramatic series type?
In the 60 minutes of an HBO show, or a CBS show, whatever the show is, there's more plot than in 60 pages, 100 pages of any book.
That's because you can have so much happen in 30 seconds by showing it.
Exactly.
And by one shot and one shot.
Well, it's not just that. It's that they're different mediums, and there's always a possibility that if you don't give your audience enough plot, they will turn the channel. Whereas that's not going to happen with a book. You sink into a book, you become part of a book. It becomes, you think the words, you see it in your head, and you fall into the rhythm of it. And people put down books all the time. I'll read 50 pages and give up, but it's not quite the same thing.
No, they got that remote just poised right there.
And it's brutal. And believe me, when you're writing television, that's all you're thinking about is like, are they going to keep watching? And that's all the networks think about.
But so that's an interesting, because I coach writers all the time, and the worst thing you can do while you're writing, I think, is start thinking about other people. Although I understand the practicality of, like, we need the readers to read it, we need the audience to like it, and yet to really to really create the thing, you've got to kind of sink into it in a way, don't you? Or does that not translate to television?
I think it's
because who knows what they're going to? You don't actually know until it happens.
You don't. And you always make mistakes. And this is the fine line that one walks as a TV writer, that you're trying to, please someone and please yourself at the same time.
Right.
And to me, ultimately, it's more important to please yourself.
Because you can answer that one for sure.
And you, exactly. You can answer. Right.
Because haven't you ever written something that you thought, man, I nailed it, and then it doesn't happen, and then something that you weren't that impressed with, and people go nuts for it?
All the time.
So,
that is the story of my life.
So what are you going to do?
Mostly the first.
Oh,
you think you've nailed it, and people are like, what?
Well, I don't get it.
I don't know. Who wrote this?
My wife recently, we watched As Good as It Gets recently, and my wife really loved that script, and so she got the script and read through it. And she hadn't read many screenplays, and she was amazed at incredible casualness of just the prose, the stage directions.
Right.
Because that's the tone of it. And I thought about that. I said, yeah, that's the way it's done. And then, so I thought about that with you, who moved from the screen to books, which is now all those words matter. I'm not saying that the stage directions don't matter, but not in the same way they do, obviously, in a book, because that's all you've got. You don't have this lighting director, you don't have the actors improvising, you don't have anything but your words.
For sure. And writing a screenplay, whether it turns into a movie or television, is collaborative. You are creating a blueprint. You are the architect, and then the contractor comes in and puts the bricks, and then the interior decorator comes in, and you're always telling them, like, no, yes, but you're not doing it yourself. Whereas a book is the finished product, and that is ultimately why I love writing books. It is the finished product. It is me. It is my voice. Whereas, I still love writing television, and it's great, but it's fun because you are collaborating.
Yeah.
It's fun because you have other people coming in and bringing it to life in a way that you hadn't thought. That, they do new things. They twist and they give it a little spark. But the book is your own, and that, I have to say, I really cherish. There's two things about writing the book that I absolutely cherish. That's the first one by far, and that gives me great pleasure. And it gives me great pleasure when I'm writing it, when I'm rewriting. I'm like just inveterate rewriter. I have to rewrite and rewrite over and over and over again. But I love it. It's like what I love to do. And when I'm rewriting a novel, it's so much fun for me. The other is that I love being in contact with readers. Like, I love doing events, and I love having readers write emails to me or letters or whatever it is, because in television, nobody ever. They could care less.
They don't even know who writes these things.
It's like a machine just spits it out.
That's right.
Like, ooh, and there's a television show.
And the reader, you see, I would offer to you that even novel writing is collaborative, because I have always felt, because I only write prose stuff now. I did theater for a while, but I only do prose now, that I start it and then the reader finishes it. In the end, It's their imagination that brings it to life. And so when they contact you, they've made it their book.
Right.
They love it, though they don't even know it, but it's their book now.
I think that that's absolutely true. And I think it's a very, you don't understand the relationship between your words and other people's thoughts and the intimacy of the process of reading somebody's words and then seeing the words in their head. I mean, it's such a weird concept.
It's so intimate. It can't be more intimate than that.
And also so strange. I mean, it speaks to humanity. Like, so people write this language thing and other people internalize the story and see it as their own, and like they see a room and they see a character and it's different than the other person sees. It honestly kind of blows my mind when I think about it too much.
Well, Drew, I got one more question for you.
Sir.
And what I'd like you to do is finish the sentence for me. If writing has taught me anything, it's taught me what?
Perseverance. Keep going. Just never stop. Keep going and going and going, because you never know. Some things work and some things don't, and you can't predict.